Now, at a glance, Top Gun may seem like one of many cheesy action flicks which littered the 1980s, but in reality, it's difficult to comprehend how influential Tony Scott's film actually was. Top Gun was the biggest film of 1986, turned Tom Cruise into an action star, had one of the best soundtracks of the decade, redefined how to shoot action sequences, and was directly responsible for a massive increase in application to the Navy for years. But you know what? We've barely even scratched the surface, as there are so many tiny bits of information that only eagle-eyed viewers would have seen or die-hard fans know about that make this film even more special, and I'm going to share some of them with you today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 20 things you somehow missed in Top Gun. Number 20. The movie doesn't actually know what a bogey is. Not only did the Navy supply Top Gun's production with their aircraft, their pilots also performed the majority of the stunts. On top of that, the Pentagon had to approve the script to ensure the Navy was portrayed in the best possible light. Because government officials had a major influence on the production, you'd assume that they would make sure the characters look right, act accordingly around their peers, and use the correct terminology. However, the term bogey is constantly misused throughout the film. Even though a bogey is an unidentified aircraft, Maverick and his squad use this word for any enemy plane that is chasing them. Once identified, a non-threatening craft is called a friendly, or a non-friendly is called a bandit, and an attacking craft is called a hostile. And if the unseen craft can be detected on the radar, it's called a skunk. But sadly, this isn't the only aviation term that is misused. As number 19, the movies don't know what ballistic means either. While flying, the pilots are sometimes referred to as going ballistic. Although many viewers assume this phrase simply means the pilot has gone nuts, this is a real term used by naval aviators. However, the characters use the phrase incorrectly. In the film, the pilots are told that they are going ballistic when they are flying at maximum speed. But this term means the exact opposite. When a pilot goes ballistic, it means that they are going too slow to maintain the control of the vehicle. This usually occurs when the aircraft is completely vertical and its speed becomes compromised by gravity. Considering the correct term for maximum speed in the Navy is envelop, the screenwriters probably chose ballistic because it sounds far cooler. Number 18. The inverted dive is impossible. Although Top Gun has many iconic shots, the one moment which tends to be ingrained in viewers' memories is when Maverick inverts his plane and flips the bird to the guy below him. When Maverick tells his colleagues about the incident in the hangar, ICEMAN dismisses it, suggesting this maneuver is impossible. Even though ICEMAN is acting like a jerk, he's actually 100% right. It is impossible to fly this close to a jet while inverted for one simple reason: the aircraft's tails would actually collide. Obviously, the production team knew this, which is why we can't see the entire jets in this sequence. Nevertheless, it is still a very awesome shot. Number 17. The title is ironic. Contrary to what some believe, Top Gun is a real division in the Navy, although it's phrased as the singular word Top Gun. Viper explains to Top Gun cadets that American soldiers have become less efficient at killing on the battlefield because they've become too reliant on advanced weaponry like missiles. Believing soldiers were losing their dogfighting skills, Top Gun was formed so that new recruits could fine-tune their firearm skills. In principle, this idea seems logical, but the question is, how do Top Gun pilots defeat the enemy? And that is with missiles. Our heroes never use guns at any point. In fact, not a single character fires a bullet throughout the entire movie. Considering the title was meant to highlight the pilot's efficiency with guns, you'd think that one of the scriptwriters would have noticed this detail, right? Number 16. Wait, the brakes speed the jet up? Anyone with a basic knowledge of fighter jets will find Top Gun so inaccurate that you'll assume the production team did zero research. But more often than not, the crew, actors, and scriptwriters were aware of basic discrepancies but kept them in for one reason, and that is that they look bloody awesome. For example, every time Maverick puts on the brakes, he viciously pushes the throttle quadrant forward before pulling the stick back. However, this maneuver is done to perform a full climb, which is the exact opposite of slowing down. Because there were multiple real-life pilots on set that could have corrected this flub, it's a safe bet that this motion was done deliberately, since braking in a fighter jet in real life doesn't look as cinematic. Number 15. Tom Cruise didn't perform any stunt flying. Tom Cruise is renowned for performing his own stunts in movies, no matter how dangerous they are. Throughout his career, he's hung on the outside of planes, climbed skyscrapers, and nearly killed himself on at least a dozen stunts. but that hasn't always been the case. For Top Gun, there was no way in hell the military was going to allow anyone but a professional pilot to fly their aircraft. Even though it looks like Tom is sailing through the skies in many key scenes, all of his stunt flying was performed by Navy captain and test pilot Scott Altman, who went on to become an astronaut. But due to masterful editing, the viewer would never doubt that Tom Cruise was in the cockpit during all of the Maverick scenes. Number 14. A stunt pilot was killed while filming. In the closing credits, it's mentioned that this film is dedicated to the memory of Art Scholl. Since Top Gun was released in a time where one just couldn't Google search her name in an instant, many viewers had no idea who this individual was and why the movie was dedicating time to him. It turned out that Art was the pilot who performed the most dangerous stunts in the entire film, and considering that he was an aeronautical specialist for over 25 years and an aeronautical professor, there were few pilots on the planet who were more qualified than him. Tragically, he died during production when he was unable to recover from a flat spin. Just before he crashed into the Pacific Ocean, he said, "I have a problem. I have a real problem." To this day, no one knows what caused him to lose control of his aircraft. Number 13. There are only 2 real missile launches. Even though the military was more than happy to give the production access to their aircraft, they were astoundingly strict with how often their weapons were used. Because firing any weaponry from a jet is dangerous and really expensive, there are only 2 moments in the film where a real missile is launched from an aircraft. Of course, if you're making a movie about fighter jets, you need to have as many scenes as possible of jets firing at each other with missiles, right? Because the director was only limited to 2 genuine missile launches, he achieved the other sequences with good old-fashioned models. These props were so convincing, though, the Navy investigated the production to see if these missile launches were actually authentic. Number 12. Some shots are repeated. Tony Scott relied on using miniatures for most of the missile shooting sequences since he was only allowed to use footage of 2 real-life missile launches, as I've just said. But even though these props and special effects look fantastic, Scott believed that they weren't as convincing as the real thing. Sure, using fake planes here and there would fool the average viewer, but other audience members would catch on quickly if the film was littered with miniatures. To get around this, Scott simply reused footage of the 2 missile launches for each dogfight. He also filmed these shots at different angles to hide the fact that he was using the same launch over and over. Pretty clever, right? Number 11. Top Gun won an Oscar. Italian musician and proclaimed father of disco, Giorgio Moroder, was approached by producer Jerry Bruckheimer to compose a theme for the song of Top Gun. Working alongside Tom Whitlock, he created the classic tune Danger Zone, which was sung by Kenny Loggins. Bruckheimer was so pleased with the work, he asked the composer to devise a slower, more romantic song, which became Take My Breath Away, which was performed by the new wave band Berlin. Even though Danger Zone became popular, Take My Breath Away earned Top Gun an Academy Award for Best Original Song. Despite the fact that there will always be naysayers who think Top Gun is nothing more than a cheesy blockbuster, let's not forget that it's also an Oscar-winning film. Number 10. Who is the enemy? No action blockbuster from the 1980s was complete unless it had a big villain. Die Hard had Hans Gruber, Aliens had the Xenomorph Queen, the Terminator had, unsurprisingly, the Terminator. So who was the big bad of Top Gun? Well, to most viewers, the villain was somebody? The final dogfight sees Maverick and his crew battle a group of unidentified jets simply called hostiles. So, who are they and why is their identity never revealed? According to the original script, these hostiles are North Koreans, but since the US was in the midst of the Cold War, they thought that it would be best not to paint the Koreans as the bad guys since they were allies with the Soviet Union. But because the pilots' masks have a red star, which is part of the North Korean flag, many viewers still deduced where the enemy's nationalities lay. Number 9. The movie should end with World War III. Top Gun concludes with Maverick and Merlin assisting Iceman and Hollywood, who have stumbled into hostile waters. While there, the pilots are attacked by a horde of jet fighters. Despite being outnumbered, Maverick manages to shoot down multiple enemies, encouraging the remaining ones to flee. The US pilots return to their base to celebrate, and Iceman embraces Maverick, telling him he can be my wingman anytime. But if the story was grounded in reality, these guys wouldn't be cheering and throwing around high fives in this climax. Since American aviators used lethal force on a hostile while they were in foreign territory, they would be in serious trouble. Although the enemy's identity isn't specified, we know that they're Soviets due to the design on their ships and masks. Since tensions with the Soviet Union couldn't have been higher at the time, such an incident would be regarded as a declaration of war. Even though Top Gun had an uplifting ending, the Top Gun's pilots' actions would probably have initiated World War III. Number 8. Those MiG jets aren't MiG jets. Nobody expects Top Gun to be realistic. You go into this movie knowing full well that the aircraft are going to perform maneuvers that laugh in the face of physics. However, one element that you'd expect to be realistic is the jets themselves, right? But unless you had a vast knowledge of naval aviation, you probably didn't realize that this aircraft doesn't actually exist. All of the MiG-28s in the film are actually Northrop F-5Fs painted black. The vehicle was used extensively by Top Gun pilots during the 1980s and are currently being used as adversary trainers. Because the script called for jet fighters to perform impossible maneuvers, it made sense to incorporate a fictional vehicle that could execute these techniques. Number 7. This was Adrian PASDAR'S film debut. Top Gun is renowned for starring several pre-fame actors including Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, and Meg Ryan. However, many people didn't realize that Adrian PASDAR made his acting debut in Top Gun when he was only 20 years old. Long before he starred in Heroes, Supergirl, or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., PASDAR portrayed Lieutenant Charles Chipper Piper in this film. If you're a huge fan of the actor, you most certainly didn't recognize him since he looks just so different. But if you love his work, you should appreciate him even more, knowing he debuted in one of the most iconic blockbusters ever. Number 6. Iceman puts on his watch twice. Just before we see Jester taking to the air with Goose, there's a brief scene where Iceman confronts Maverick on the stairwell to talk about his showboating. Even though this scene is short and simple, there is one glaring mistake. As Maverick walks up the stairs, we see Iceman fumbling to put his Rolex on. In the very next shot, we see Iceman putting his watch on again. It's a quick flub, but once you notice it, it's impossible to miss. Considering how difficult it must have been to maintain continuity in the sequences revolving around planes, aircraft, explosions, and missile launches, it's baffling the film crew didn't notice this easy-to-fix error. Number 5. Is Maverick riding that motorcycle? In one of the most testosterone-oozing shots in cinema, we see Maverick riding his motorcycle while an F-14 takes off in the background. As the vehicle flies into the air, Maverick gives a fist pump while Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone plays in the background. Interestingly, Tom Cruise had no experience with motorcycling and only learned during pre-production. Mere weeks before filming this scene, he ventured to the House of Motorcycles in California, where he was taught how to ride in the shop's parking lot. And yet, Tom looked so confident in this scene that you couldn't even tell how inexperienced he was. Oh wait, yes you can, because if you look at the fender, you can blatantly see a trailer pulling the motorcycle with tie-down straps, meaning that Tom isn't even driving. In the immortal words of Tony Stark, thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. Number 4. Many measures were taken to hide Tom Cruise's height. When it comes to Hollywood's worst-kept secrets, Tom Cruise's height is pretty much at the top. Even though he tries to hide his stature with shoe lifts, it's common knowledge that the action star is only 5'7". But even at the beginning of his career, studios were doing all they could to make him appear taller. While filming Top Gun, actors had to lean to their side or stand slightly behind Tom so it didn't look like they were towering over the main star. This was a big problem since his love interest Charlie was played by Kelly McGillis, who stands at 5'10", and it doesn't help that the character regularly wears high heels. To hide the 3 inches difference, Tom wore lifts and the camera was angled in a way to make him appear taller than she was. And yes, that means that when the couple are supposedly naked while making out, Tom actually still had his shoes on. Number 3. Did you spot the real Viper? Although Top Gun has many technical consultants, the top advisor was Pete Pettigrew. Now, Pettigrew was a Top Gun instructor who earned the reputation as a master pilot after he shot down a MiG jet in the Vietnam War. Not only was he responsible for maintaining the technical accuracies of the film, he was also a direct inspiration for Commander Viper, who leads the Top Gun applicants. And it turned out that Pettigrew's codename was actually Viper. On top of that, Pettigrew makes a brief appearance in the film. After Charlie rejects Maverick in the club, she makes her way to an older gentleman by a table who is portrayed by Pettigrew. Number 2. The reshoots are obvious. When Top Gun was previewed for test audiences, it was criticized for not having enough romance. This critique compelled the producers Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson to film more sequences between Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis, including the elevator scene and the sex scene. However, there were several issues. In between the original production and the reshoots, Kelly had lost 16 pounds and got a haircut, and to make matters worse, Tom had grown his hair long for the color of money. To hide how different Kelly's hairstyle was, she had to wear a hat in the elevator scene. She also held a clipboard close to her chest to hide her weight loss. Nevertheless, it's extremely noticeable that these scenes were reshot once you spot these little details. And number 1, what are the characters' actual names? Even if you haven't seen Top Gun in years, years, it's easy to remember who is who. Iceman is the cocky pilot who keeps trying to one-up Maverick. Maverick's best friend Goose, who uses humor to cheer up his mates and to ridicule his enemies. Stinger is the ball-busting commander. Viper is the instructor who acts tough but has a heart of gold. But if you ask about the characters' real names, even the most avid fan probably couldn't tell you. At first, one would just assume that the Top Gun applicants' names are never mentioned. However, all of the main pilots' names are uttered or are seen on file at least once. Maverick's real name is Pete Mitchell. Iceman is Tom Kazansky. Goose is Nick Bradshaw. Viper is called Mike. Merlin is Sam Wells. Stinger is Tom Jordan. And Jester is Rick Heatherly. But since Pete doesn't sound as badass as Maverick, it's easy to understand why fans of Top Gun choose to only remember the characters by their nicknames. And there we go, my friends. Those were 20 things that you somehow missed in Top Gun. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. I will always be your wingman, my friend, so let me try and prop you up with some positivity today by telling you you are a massive ledge, and you deserve all of the best things in life, like love, happiness, and success. We all do as human beings, and I want you to go out there and absolutely smash it today. Believe in yourself, because you are a big ledge. As always, I have been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.